Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Weekly Watt. This is Colin Jenkins alongside my guest here, Chris Chang. Now, Chris Chang is Ergatta's Director of Exercise Science and Programming. He's in charge of designing and writing all of the workouts and programs. So he is the man that you can yell at when you're going through a particularly nasty workout on the Ergatta rower. Is that about right, Chris?
Basically.
Do you ever test a workout after designing it and think, I am an evil, evil son of a bitch?
Yeah, so it's funny because I do get some of that. I don't test every single workout. Sometimes I'll test a workout and then based on how that felt, I'll scale it up or down in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely before I took over, my colleague Jarrett, who used to row for Team USA,
Yeah.
he has a ton of competitive rowing experience at that like high professional level. Um, but I remember for him, he was saying that there was a period of time where he had a lower back injury that he was dealing with, and he would make a workout, but he didn't have the ability to actually test it because of the lower back injury. So he would design it, and then he would see the feedback about like, oh my God, who made this workout? This was horrible, like just horribly difficult and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there are times that it's it's very worthwhile testing the workouts to feel how hard they are, to know what other people are going to be going through.
No, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, this is the Weekly Watt, where we cover all of the latest connected fitness news and updates, as well as bring on the men and women behind the scenes like Chris here to pick their brains and learn something new each and every week. If you like that, you can support the show by subscribing to the Connect the Watts YouTube channel or the Weekly Watt podcast. Of course, you can tune in and interact with these shows live here on YouTube at youtube.com/connectthewatts. So, Chris, I want to learn a little bit more about you and your background and how you kind of got started designing workouts for Ergatta.
Yep, absolutely. So originally, I was actually a mechanical engineer, and I used to design power plant equipment. And I
Yeah.
kind of got to a point where I really didn't enjoy what I did. So I was looking for what other career paths or different types of industries I would want to go into based on my interests. And
Mm-hmm.
health and fitness was always something I gravitated towards. So eventually, I ended up taking a big swing, leaving engineering, just going down the fitness path and joining Equinox as a personal
Okay.
trainer. And then after personal training and health coaching for 6 years, and part of that at Equinox, part of that running my own business, I eventually kind of missed the technical aspects of engineering. So I was kind
Mm-hmm.
of looking to blend the two and looking to get into the connected fitness space. So eventually, when I was looking into product management and seeing how I can blend the two paths,
Mm-hmm.
Ergatta reached out to me with the specific opportunity that kind of offered the best of both worlds, where I can
Yeah.
do a lot of the fitness programming, but at the same time, be able to help scale a fitness product that is technical in nature between like the software and the hardware, and be able to give an experience that scales to thousands of people as opposed to just the tens of people that I can see in person.
Absolutely. Interesting. And so, like, let me go back for a second. So, let me hold on. So, what I want to talk to you real quick about about that program and how you design things, because
Yep.
let me refresh. A lot of us tend to do workouts week to week or day to day. We decide what we want to do based on, how we're feeling that day, and let alone, planning out a week, let alone planning out a month, let alone planning out like a block of several months. And I know with Ergatta, there's programs that range from just a few weeks to a month to now that there are several like multi-block, multi-month programs that you guys have developed
Mhm.
on there. And so I want to talk about what you think are the benefits of kind of following a longer term program with kind of specific focuses, and why somebody might want to kind of look into following a program like that versus just kind of continuing to jump onto a workout day to day. Like, what are the benefits, do you feel?
Yep. No, absolutely. I think the two biggest benefits to following a program like that is probably going to be managing intensities over time and then progressive overload.
Mm-hmm.
So when you end up picking workouts day to day, you may do it with some intention or you may not do it with any intention potentially.
Yeah.
So basically there's some people that might go balls to the wall and push themselves like as hard as possible almost every single workout.
Hmm.
Or you might have the flip side where maybe someone works maybe below their maximum capacity for most of the time. So having a program where you have structured like high intensity days versus structured like medium or low intensity days kind of automatically helps you find the right balance for
Hmm.
overall intensity so you don't overtrain or undertrain. And then the other aspect is progressive overload, just making sure that the program gets progressively more challenging over time. So with weightlifting, that could be adding a little bit more weight or volume over time. In
Hmm.
this case, we're looking at how much time you spend at each intensity zone. So in the Ergatta experience, we break everything down into personalized intensities. So that way your sprint is slightly different than my sprint because it's
Hmm.
calibrated to a time trial, basically. So basically looking at relative intensity zones of like sprint, race, steady, and paddle. How much
Hmm.
time are you spending in each? And can I increase that amount of time over the course of this program?
Got it. Got it. And so, one of the things I've always found, most interesting in terms of like workouts is how much differently they can affect, one person from another. So, a classic example would be a 2K or 2,000 meter row effort.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you have a beginner do that time trial, oftentimes you'll have them maybe get off the bike, say, "Oh, it's kind of hard, but like, what's next?" Because they don't really have necessarily like the skill development, the power output, or the ability to really kind of dig into that workout. Whereas, a very advanced rower, you give them a 2K time trial, and that might set them out for the whole day, if not like longer, because of how much they can actually kind of put into that effort. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, what's interesting is the differences between what you get out of the workouts are very dependent, not just on what the workouts are, but who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And why I think it's important that some people may consider looking at different programs that are designed maybe for more of a beginner versus an intermediate and advanced. And I know that you guys kind of sort of do that. So I wanted to get kind of thoughts from you on what you kind of take into account when you're writing your programs or putting them together, and what sort of factors do you consider when writing a program for a beginner or an intermediate or somebody who's more advanced?
Yep, no, absolutely. So the the calibration that we have on our platform is 1,000 meters. It used to be 2,000 meters, but we
Mm-hmm.
found that for a lot of beginners, 2,000 meters is a lot to ask.
Yeah.
So, and even 1,000 meters is a lot to ask for someone that's
Mm-hmm.
never rode before. Maybe he's just coming off the couch. So, one of the first things I did when I came on was spent a lot of time kind of scrolling through the Reddit feeds, scrolling through the Facebook feeds, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
listening to people's feedback about what they think about specific workouts or specific programs. And I found a common theme that a lot of beginners who had never worked out before, maybe it's been a couple of years since they've worked out,
Yeah.
found that a lot of the programs on the platform were too difficult for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of my initial goal was to make a push program that was catered to taking somebody literally from the couch to being able to complete a 1K comfortably, kind of like
Yeah.
a counts to 5K program that you'd hear about at Corporate Wellness.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the first things I did was I tried to look at like what are the approximate split times that I would expect from somebody that's a complete beginner.
Yeah.
And I tried to look at for those people, how much time can I realistically expect them to work for? Because if you're just starting, rowing for 5 or 10 minutes is tough, like
Mm-hmm.
let alone rowing for like 20 or 30 minutes. So I tried to kind of break down, okay, how much time could I expect someone to realistically row straight? And then
Yeah.
I tried to kind of work from there. So I built out like alternating intervals between like 1 minute at kind of like a steady intensity, which is kind of like a jog,
Mm-hmm.
and then 1 minute of rest and just alternating at 1 minute intervals. So that way there's enough built in rest time that someone could still make it through a 10-minute workout. But then if they choose to push themselves more, they can kind of work as active rest during the rest intervals.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of gave enough flexibility for both. But basically, I looked at how can I increase that duration over time. So if I started out with no more than 1 minute of rowing at a time, maybe that built up to 2 minutes at a time, and then 3 minutes at a time. And I just had a sense of progress over the course of that program. And I actually used some of the users as guinea pigs. I would kind of
Yeah.
actually like talk to some people on Reddit that were willing to give feedback. and I would
Mhm.
refer them to specific workouts that I made and said, hey, can you try this out? Just let me know how it goes. And I was able to get like real-time feedback before actually releasing the program to make sure that it was calibrated to the right level.
Interesting. Yeah. And kind of going back to what you're talking about is like, you don't necessarily test all of the workouts yourself. And I think for a lot of people, it's understandably because the workouts aren't always designed for you. And so to have a beginner workout, you won't get necessarily much information by doing it yourself because it's not challenging for you necessarily, or it's not complex enough to make you kind of your effort, hard. So testing it yourself doesn't help it. By testing people who are in that kind of subcategory, it makes complete sense to kind of get that feedback, which is great. Now, I want to discuss one of the other things I saw in some of your programs, and something that is overall I feel is missing from a lot of programs in the entire connected fitness landscape, and that's those lower intensity effort type workouts. I feel like a lot of people taking connected fitness classes, they spend the vast majority, if not every single class, doing more either like high intensity interval training, or like you were saying, pretty much just going as hard as they can on any given day. And that's because it's not no fault to people. They just want to get the most out of their time. And that's just what they feel will be giving them the best results possible. But as I know that like lower intensity workouts have a huge benefit too. So I wanted to get your thoughts on why somebody might want to not always just push super hard, and what benefits they may see from adding more lower intensity, like lower heart rate effort workouts, into their regular training.
Yep, absolutely. So I think everything really comes back to recovery and
Mhm.
like potential output, because if you push yourself really hard in a HIIT workout, you can work at maximal capacity, but you only have so much ability to do that over time before your body just needs to recover. Otherwise, you won't be able to produce max force or max effort of some sort. So being able to take a day to work at kind of like an easy jog pace or like a steady pace, that can help build just your base endurance, but it
Mhm.
also can help build out your recovery system. So that way your body can bounce back faster from those high intensity bouts, whether that's HIIT, whether that's like heavy strength training. And I kind of think about it almost similar to like zone two training with heart rate training,
Mhm.
is trying to spend time near zone two in order to help build that out. Um, but I tried to structure a lot of the programs in that kind of beginner program I mentioned such that like every third day was a different intensity. So it might be like medium intensity day, high intensity day, low intensity day, and have
Yeah.
that kind of structure over time. So that way there's always ebbs and flows, and there's always some peaks of high intensity, some dips of lower intensity to recover. But yeah, like being able to work anywhere below your anaerobic threshold, you can start to work in kind of like that fat burning zone. And I think about the analogy of like the hybrid car,
Yeah.
whereas if a hybrid car has electricity below 30 miles an hour and it runs on gasoline above that to do it like the high intensity outputs,
Mhm.
then in this case, we want to help build out that electric engine or help people build out that fat burning engine. Because if their switching point happens at like 10 miles an hour, they're almost never using the electric battery and they're
Yeah.
almost just relying on gasoline solely. So in this case, spending time at those lower intensities helps you raise that threshold, or maybe instead of switching gears at 10 miles an hour, maybe it switches at 35 miles an hour. So you can actually spend or expend like more energy
Mhm.
without switching out of the fat burning zone, essentially.
No, absolutely. And the way I see it is like, I think it's kind of interesting what you said too about recovery, and just overall effort and building a base. And I think those are terms that a lot of people are maybe unfamiliar with. So I just want to give like an example that I know that I've experienced, because I used to do a lot of training competitively for various sports and stuff, and I'm a relatively I'm relatively good at strength stuff. So if you put a barbell in my hands, I can adapt and get quicker and get stronger very quickly. But that's not always the best for necessarily. And so, in order for me to kind of build up and get better, I had to do an enormous amount of low effort work. Not only because you can still do the high intensity stuff, but the low effort, it's like the high intensity stuff, if you push hard on it, you can really kind of build to a mostly max effort in development pretty quickly. But that low effort is that base you're saying, and it can take years and years and years. That's why those aerobic athletes are like peaking like their 30s and 40s when all other athletes that's like well past their prime, because they're building that aerobic base for like decades. Yeah. And if you're able to at least tie that in just a little bit into the training, it doesn't have to be a ton, like at least you're building that base. So down the road, next year and the following year, you're going to have a huge, much bigger base to build on and be able to push, faster, harder, and recover so much quicker. The recovery piece I can't underestimate, because like you're building not even just in the workouts, like the intervals themselves, but even between workouts, like you just are able to withstand so much, because people don't realize, I think, because it's not common knowledge, that your aerobic system is largely in charge of flushing things out and recovering and allowing you to improve that between workouts. And I think it's really interesting, for people to try to add it in. And it's one of the things I noticed too with your some of the programs, where some of them would say like, this is like 10 workouts, but it's designed for 1 month long. And so it's like, well, if you want to do more workouts than that, add like the longer, go to like the longer workouts or the slower intensities. It kind of gives you that in the description. And I think that's super smart. Now, in terms of something like most people don't know about me, and I was talking to you about earlier, is that, exercise program design has been a fascination of mine for over the past 12 years. And it's how I got into connected fitness, actually, because, I was programming workouts for a lot of people. And over the pandemic, a lot of people got connected fitness equipment, and they were asking me to program that stuff within their framework of what their goals were. And so in order to do that, I was like, well, I have to learn what these tools are and what's going on with them. And after kind of digging into it, it quickly came to the realization that, these have the capacity to be much more engaging for somebody at home than me just saying, hey, do this by yourself. They actually had a program to kind of follow. And, part of that is they had this piece of equipment that's much more affordable than necessarily paying for a personal trainer. It's more convenient, obviously, than to leave your house and go to a gym. And like with the gamification aspect, which I want to talk about next, it's just so much easier for the average person to stay motivated past, a few weeks or months to keep coming back. And so for those of you who haven't heard of the term gamification, it's simply a word for, making something like workouts like feel more like a game, where you can see your progression being tracked, or you can have your workouts feel like they're in some sort of game format where it's not quite as boring and more engaging than just rowing, or, having challenges to compete and trying to set new records. So I wanted to talk to you about how this gamification process kind of works and how you guys focus on it at Ergatta, because I know it's obviously a big focus.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple different aspects. Some are the game-based experiences. So by that I mean, like, a race workout is kind of like a Mario Kart style race, where you can like legitimately just race against other people through either a single distance, or it might be a multi-segment race where you race for 500 meters, rest, race for 500 meters, rest. So that's one aspect of gaming, is the competition aspects, where you can push yourself harder than you would normally on your own.
Yeah.
And then another game experience is called Meteor, which is kind of like Flappy Bird, where it's a side scroll game. And if you go faster, your character will go up higher on the screen. Whereas if you go slower, it'll go lower. So you can collect tokens at preset heights based on if I want you to do a high intensity interval versus medium intensity versus low intensity for recovery. So those games create a very interactive experience that get you through a single workout. And the kind of macro level stuff that happens kind of between workouts is, I guess there's a whole bunch of aspects to it, but one feature we have is monthly challenges. So going back to that Meteor game, all of the tokens that are on screen have different point values. So the high intensity sprints have a point value of 4, and then they go down to like 3, 2, 1. And one of the monthly challenges going on right now this month is basically collecting as many meteor points as you can. And we have 3 thresholds. One is 5,000 points, one's 10,000, one's 15,000. So when you're in a workout, you have the ability to collect as many points as possible. And you could do it through HIIT workouts, through endurance workouts, but you're kind of working now towards a monthly goal of trying to accumulate as many of these points as you can to hit those thresholds. And we have another feature within the Meteor game called bonuses, where if your interval is supposed to be at steady or race, maybe the bonus section comes up and it basically offers you the ability to go one level above whatever you're actually at and collect bonus tokens. So now, if it was supposed to be a race segment, you can actually get bumped up to sprint and collect 4-point tokens as opposed to like the tokens were 3 points. So that gives you another ability to score more points than someone else in the platform.
Now those bonus points, they're my most hated thing because they're really genius, by the way, too, because you don't know they're actually coming. So there's nowhere when you're taking these meteor workouts, like you don't know, like, oh, in 1 minute there's going to be I could do a bonus one. So they come up at usually times where sometimes it's like, oh, you feel good, maybe I should go into these bonus tokens, but then you also have to think, oh wait, there's like hard efforts coming ahead. Do I really want to do that right now and possibly just blow up, going further? And so to me, it's always like this risk reward kind of scenario where it's like, I kind of want to get them, but then like, I'm always like, oh man, I'm going to really hurt. So depending on where they're at in the workout. So it definitely makes it more engaging because like, I'm thinking about like, just even had the fact that conversation is going on in my head while I'm trying to hold these efforts of should I push it more? I think it's super, super fun and engaging on that.
Yeah. And I think it even creates a sense of repeatability in a workout where normally you probably wouldn't do the same workout twice just because like, oh, I already did this one. I want to do something different. Yeah. But in terms of gamification, if that happened, and that's happened to me too, where I've seen the bonus tokens come up in sprint and I'll start sprinting to try to collect them. And then as soon as that interval's over, I'll realize like I just gassed myself and I can't finish the workout now, or I'm struggling to finish. So you can even go back through the same workout and try to have a slightly better strategy now that you know the bonus section is here, here, or here.
Definitely. And there's a timing aspect too in Meteor. Like there's different aspects that like the more you do it, the more you kind of learn. It's like you can try to balance the timing. Like so there's different lanes, right? And you just have to be in the lane when the time the token comes, and they come at a certain interval. And so like as you get better, if like you're tired, you can kind of time it right to like I'm a skimmer. I skim I'm nowhere near the top of those lanes. I always kind of skim at the bottom and pop in. But there's a strategy, there's a rhythm aspect, there's a obviously a skill aspect to it. And I think all those things kind of combine to kind of keep you coming back to it, which I think is great. And one of the complaints kind of that I've heard from a few people about who have maybe tried the Ergatta once or twice is that there's not like enough workouts, right? There's like essentially there's like 4 to 5 different workout formats. There's the Meteor, there's like speed-based, like or cadence-based workouts. There's like your speed-based workouts, and there's like a hybrid, and the race workouts you were talking about. And the argument is they would like to see more various game modes, but I don't feel that way because for me, like good game design, and this is true of workout game design or video game design, it's about creating having a simple framework that's really solid, and then kind of building from there, from whether it's variety from there or adding complexity or adding difficulty, but still challenging you within that same framework. And to give an example, I think a lot of people might be familiar with is like Mario, right? Yeah. Mario got really, really popular somewhat because of its game design. And the game design is really just one movement, and that's a jump. Like they dialed in Mario's jump better than anybody else. And they created a game system around that jump to kind of add more variables around it once you kind of mastered the basics. And I sort of feel that way like around Ergatta's games, like the Meteor, because the Meteor is always centered around one framework, and that is stay at the right spade in a lane and collect a coin or token. But there are hundreds of Meteor workouts, and they all challenge you in different ways depending on those bonus lanes, depending on like what interval speeds and how much recovery and all these things. And so I feel like having a centered kind of framework games that are kind of pillars allows, and I'll have you talk more about it, but allows somebody like you to more bring in real training into that framework rather than having a bunch of like 20 different games. I feel like it would be much harder to adapt a legitimate training stimulus and program into those games, because there's a lot of games that are like there's a class for anybody who's ridden or rode before. A lot of times people have rode on the Concept 2, which has a famously bad fish game, which is like the Meteor, except it's like terrible. Like you're not really rowing. You're like stopping, starting, pulling real hard. And it's like, it's a game, but it's not designed well for fitness. And that's what I think would happen if you have too many things. So I just wanted to like get from you, I guess, is like how you kind of go about putting your workouts into the game modes, and like, do you see any additional game modes coming down the line, or like anything that you guys are kind of working on?
Yeah. So like you said, like the games are very important when they're being designed so that they're super interactive, but also feel very functional with rowing.
Yeah.
So we're cautious not to put out games just for the point of putting out games, just because like that's not going to help us just to put out like a bunch of crappy games that maybe don't play very well or maybe don't give you a great workout. So we want to make sure that they're fitness forward and actually give you a good workout, first of all. And the other piece is that they feel very engaging and interactive, and they incentivize the right things. So depending on how a game is set up, it could incentivize bad form. Like the fish game you said, like if you're trying to really achieve a certain goal, sometimes you might have to break your technique or form in order to accomplish that goal. So we're kind of creating maybe incentives that we shouldn't incentivize. So we have to be careful, like when we're designing everything, to make sure that it's laid out to give us the best effect that we want in the end. But yeah, we do have new games on the way. So we go through a pretty rigorous like design stage and a pretty rigorous prototyping stage before we ever release anything new. So there's a lot of stuff in the works right now, but we're just trying to vet it to make sure that it really gives the right experience, not just a new experience. And I think that game fatigue is a real thing where like if you're playing Mario, even though it's maybe not that different from level to level, there are times you might want to mix it up and play Zelda or play something else. So we do want to have like a new variety of offerings, especially because some people may be a big fan of like pulse workouts, while other people might be a very big fan of meteor workouts, but they may not like to do the other one. So we want to have enough options that someone can do more than one game that they like to enjoy, and then still maybe stay away from the games that they don't want to do. So parts of it kind of cater to, is this a beginner that maybe doesn't know how to row very well versus is this an advanced user? So like the hybrid workout you mentioned, where you have to get like your like actual split time or speed and your rhythm paired up at the same time, that game has not been very user friendly to beginners specifically, because they don't
but it's a challenge for sure to combine those two.
So that game has been much better for more advanced rowers or people that are pretty competent in their technique at the time. But if you're a new rower that doesn't have those skills yet, it's almost too challenging and doesn't really give you a very good access point or entry point for someone to learn those skills. So it's kind of better for someone that already has it as opposed to someone that's trying to learn.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, thanks again, Chris, for jumping in here with us today. It's been a pleasure to kind of hear more about Ergatta's training and the programming, and just to learn more about like you and like what you guys are doing. So yeah, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you being here with us. Remember to subscribe to the channel or the podcast, and continue to watch for all the latest connected fitness tips, reviews, guides. And I'm not sure if we're going to be back next Monday or not. We'll definitely be back at least the following Monday after that. So if I don't see you, have a great rest of the week. Stay safe. And I hope to have you and see the rest of you hop on again soon. All right. See you later.
Yeah. Thank you a lot for having me on the call.